Today, we're in conversation with advertising tycoon Sir Martin Sorrell, who's now the executive chairman of S4 Capital. So, welcome.
You've got the executive chairman, right? That's fine. Good.
Lovely. So, welcome to India. And
Good to be here.
I'll straight away get into our conversation. How do you see the elections of 2019 being different from that of the previous round, particularly in terms of the strategies being adopted by the ruling BJP party as well as the opposition?
Well, from the point of view of the electorate, you want continuity. I mean, when you have volatility in government, it's probably a negative. I mean, you want certainly 4 years, you want to be 8 years, or 5 years, you want to be 10 years, depending on what the terms are. So I think that's the key issue. I mean, if we think uncertainty in an Indian context, my God, look at UK, far be it from an Englishman or Britain to be talking about Indian politics or the economy. Look at the UK. I mean, the uncertainty surrounding the UK is huge at the moment. I can't think that any significant investment decision is being made in the environment we have in the UK. And we're charting uncharted waters. I mean, these are waters we've never seen. And there could well be constitution.
You've only supported the idea of a second referendum.
Yes.
Do you see that happening?
Yes. Well, the probability of it happening has increased, but I still don't think it's sufficiently strong for there to be one. I mean, we also have a question now whether there'll be a general election. So, I mean, or will the EU, give Theresa May a little bit more wiggle room on this backstop which is the big issue that Boris Johnson and others have made a big issue of within the Conservative Party, and Labour is making an issue of as well. So it's a really uncertain situation, and I think really negative for investment and jobs in a UK context. So it's going back to the Indian question. It's India times a very large number. I mean, this is on a magnitude that makes the Indian situation or the uncertainty in India look very small in comparison.
Although it seems very unlikely that her deal will actually go through the UK Parliament, at this side, how do you see Britain's journey in and post-Brexit era, or even if it chooses to stay married to the EU?
Well, let's assume for a minute that we're gone. It's either a hard Brexit, no deal, which will be very tough. My view is that we have to pursue the sort of Singaporean model, if I can put it that way. That is a low tax, low regulation model. I mean, I'm not in favor of us coming out of Europe. So assuming we have to, we become a low tax, very efficient, low regulation. So we're regulation light. So we become a home for companies that are not as friendly or befriended elsewhere. That I think is really interesting. That's one thing. The second thing is, and this is very pertinent to India, we have to develop our businesses. I'm very proud of the business that we created, not created, but we consolidated really and created here in India over the years to garner a very strong share of the advertising and marketing service market. And we had the same strong position in China, we had the same strong position in Russia, we had the same strong position in Brazil. That was a very different position to the normal British company where trade, 40% of our trade or whatever it is in Germany, France, Italy and Spain, the heart of the EU. What we haven't done in Britain is altered our trade patterns. So our relationships with India become much, much more important than they ever have been. And as a result of Brexit, we have to shift our attention.
Okay, speaking about advertising, it's from stepping down from WPP after a stint of about 33 years to now setting up S4 Capital. What have the past 8 months been like?
Well, I mean, they've been pretty hectic. I mean, at some levels they've been, the advantage is I have a clean sheet of paper. The disadvantage is I have a clean sheet of paper. The advantage is I don't have any of the legacy or the weight of the past. Some of those decisions I made myself, it's true, but I'm not weighed down by legacy business. The disadvantages of having a clean sheet of paper is that I don't have the scale. So we're operating on a relatively smaller scale. And I mean, we've gone from a standing start. We injected a company called Media Monks, which is a content company, digital content company, into S4 Capital and then injected it into a quoted shell called Deriston, and we changed the name to S4 Capital. We now have a market cap of about $400 million.
That's right.
with the deal that we did with Mighty Hive, which is in programmatic media planning and buying. So we have at S4 Capital, we're a purely digital operation. The industry in the world is about $1 trillion, about 500 billion in old stuff and 500 billion in new stuff. In the old stuff, digital now is accounting for about 40% of the market. So we're really focused on that 200 billion in the old stuff that is becoming digital, much more digital content, some of the new stuff as well, but principally on that 200 billion. And we have three areas. And I looked at the WPP portfolio when I left, and I said, you know, where is the growth? Digital content, first-party data, that's data that tells everybody what you and I do in terms of buying products and services or media consumption habits. And then last but not least, digital media planning and buying. I mean, what I'm really interested in with S4 Capital is how can we create a truly differentiated model? We're not here in India.
Are you planning to?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we'll either do it by not a big acquisition, a small acquisition, or merger with a small company, because we're creating a unitary company, no earn-outs, no sort of taking minority investments or even majority investments. What we want to do is create an integrated whole. Can
you tell us a little bit about the kind of company that you would be eyeing?
Well, we're very focused on those two areas I mentioned. Obviously, data is correct. So data analytics is part of it. Okay. But the two areas are digital content. So you've seen, you know, there are some agencies here in India, for example, that are small agencies, but have grown pretty quickly.
That's right.
People have either peeled off from a traditional agency, or they have digital agencies. They've created digital agencies with themselves or partners. That's one area. And then media planning buying is not as sophisticated, I think, in the programmatic area yet. That'll come.
So, Sorrell, I would say that you've ruffled up a few feathers by publicly stating your concerns about how WPP is being run.
I'm a shareholder, though. Am I not entitled to express a view?
Of course, of course.
Are you suggesting that I shouldn't?
No, not
I shouldn't express my. I want to get the record straight.
Absolutely. So you've been quoted as saying that WPP is a car crash in slow motion, and quote unquote. And you've also said that WPP is becoming too London focused under new CEO Mark Reed. Would you say that you still have friends in WPP who would agree to those concerns?
I know they do. I know they do. Well, the car crash, it was mentioned, one of the executives at WPP, one of the design companies, said that we referred to us being a speck in the mirror, you know, a long way behind. And I just made the riposte that, you know, if you're in a car crash, that speck does tend to catch up with you much more quickly than you thought. So that's one thing. On the way, the style of management, and I think it is a really important one. I mean, when your largest account is in review, and you criticize the creative capabilities of your colleagues in America, and the client then announces the result of their view, as a result of that review, the contributing factor to losing part of the business was the lack of creative prowess in America, you sort of shoot yourself in the foot. So, and I do think, you know, we're traveling. I mean, here we are talking about India. I don't know whether Mark Reed or any of his senior management since he's been appointed, or even as they've been joint COOs, have been here to India. To my knowledge, they haven't. India is a very important. India is probably, maybe with the exception of one other market I can think of, Vietnam, our strongest, I'll say as a shareholder, our strongest market share. Now, I think it's important to come here and...
Today, S4 Capital is a small speck in the universe, but you've been quite vocal about your ambition to sort of take down WPP.
No, that's going too far. You've been very modulated, now you're going too far. Nobody's ever said that. We refer to WPP being a peanuts. You can't compare the two. I mean, we're totally different. We're a purely digital operation, very focused on the content, very focused on the data, very focused on the media planning and buying. That is totally different to where WPP is.
Do you ever think about buying back WPP?
Do I ever think about it? No, I haven't thought about it, actually. I mean, that would take an awful lot of money. An awful lot of money. That would have to be a big syndicate deal if you were going to do that.
We'll wait.
Just do the maths.
Oh, all right. So
if you have anybody you know who's interested in backing that idea, we can see. We can talk about that.
All right. So Martin Sorrell, thank you so much for joining us on CNBC TV 18. Thank you so much for watching.